You want us to just go ahead and get started, or should we wait on it? Yes, it is. Okay. We got banking and insurance at 1:30. That's all we need.
It's
This is the agenda. I've got one with. We'll go ahead and get started. Apologize for being late. I got waylaid by a filibuster, I think. It was in my office. Clerk, call the roll.
Senator Butler,
Here.
Senator Elliott, Senator Orr, Senator Allen, Senator Albritton, Senator Roberts, Senator Bell, Senator Kelly,
Here.
Senator Coleman Madison,
Here.
Senator Marika Coleman, Senator Stewart. We have a quorum.
All right, quorum being present, first bill we'll call the House Bill 179, Representative Lomax.
Senator Butler and members of the committee, thanks for having me here today for HB 179. So this is identical to the bill that Senator Weaver brought before your committee that you passed, essentially EMT professionals, emergency medical professionals, provide distinctive license plates. The funds for those tags currently in the general fund, and the intent originally the bill was to send those to the ambulance association as well as the EMT association. So this just provides.
Mr. Chairman, I move favorable.
I move favorable. Let me just comment on that. It's better that those funds go to the EMS folks. They use that to buy equipment, and a lot of that equipment's expensive. It makes it easier for them to get a direct fund rather than come through the general fund. Move favorable. Motion by Senator Roberts. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by
Coleman Madison.
Coleman Madison. Clerk, call the roll.
Senator Butler,
Aye.
Senator Elliott, Senator Orr, Senator Allen,
Aye.
Senator Albritton, Senator Roberts, Senator Bell, Senator Kelly, Senator Madison, Senator Coleman, Senator Stewart. Bill passes. Favorable report.
What's the?
Mr.
Yeah, there
Chairman,
you go. You got to wait until we vote.
Mr. Chairman,
10.
10 ayes, no nays. The bill's given favorable report.
is this the first time that we've had Representative Lomax in our committee?
It has been, Lomax is headed out the door.
We
He's
were
smart.
trying to
He's leaving.
congratulate him on a job well done, sir.
Well, let's congratulate James on a job well done. I've known him for a long, long time, and he's going to do an excellent job. in the House and probably in the Senate one day. All right, second bill is House Bill 163.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. And what this does, it allows HVAC industry to use any refrigerant that's approved by EPA. And it just changes up our ability.
Mr. Chairman, move favorable report.
Favorable report by Senator Elliott, seconded by Senator Roberts. Any questions? If not, any objections using previous roll?
I added you.
Added you. Okay. 11 ayes, no nays, and bill's given favorable report. Next bill on the agenda, Senate Bill 279, Senator Price.
What this bill is doing is there's been some confusion on some of our local school boards, especially when they have as far as an elected school superintendent. So what this does as far as them being able to adjust their pay during that term, it will put the elected and as far as appointed school superintendents on the same criteria as far as.
All right. Any questions?
Mr. President,
Senator Albritton?
thank you. Retroactive till July 1st, 2020. We're doing this for somebody, aren't we? So that's a yes? Okay.
Motion for favorable report, is there a second? Seconded by Senator Kelly. Any objections using previous roll? If not, bill's given favorable report. Next bill on the agenda is Senate Bill 238. Senator Allen,
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. May I sit here? Do this?
floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. This bill, we've had it for a couple of years, and it's a very simple bill. It's requiring all public schools in Alabama to play the national anthem at least once a week. Now, we modified this. The other piece was requiring all athletic events to sing the national anthem before the events, but we modified this, and this is a very simple bill, just requiring all public schools in Alabama to sing the national anthem once a week. And to give you a little details on this, page 3, you may want to just take a quick glance at it. The local board of education will require some policies, develop some policies for this, and of course it's anyway. Many of you have sung this song yourself, and do not ask me to sing it, but it's a beautiful song. So,
Well, in lieu of you giving us a rendition, I'm going to ask if there's any questions. One question, you're going to sing it for us.
Not this time, but I have sung it publicly several times. So I have a question for the gentleman as it relates to penalty, because there is a shall, it's not a may, in the bill. So if this passes as a constitutional amendment and a school board does not adhere to this, what's the penalty?
that's going to be left up to the local school board to develop that policy.
Does it say that in the bill? It does not. It doesn't say that. So I was just wondering, what happens if there's a penalty? So I really have a question for the entire committee. Is there anybody on this committee that is retired career military? So no one. You are. And so he and I then, because I'm not a career military, but I was a military brat, if that's what they refer to us, that of course we're dependents. And so I grew up going to Department of Defense schools. Some people know that my history, many of you all don't. Actually was born in England, and I know y'all can tell by this amazing British accent that I have, but I was born in England.
I did not know that.
I was born in England, and then we moved to Satellite Beach. So I was at Satellite Air Force Base, which is where all the NASA ships go up from. Then we went to Spangdahlem, England. Excuse me, Spangdahlem, Germany. Went to kindergarten, first grade there. Then went to Columbus, Mississippi. Actually went to high school at Alconbury, England. The first 2 years, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, Alconbury, England. Then Tuscaloosa, Alabama for the last part of it. And I asked that question because in Department of Defense schools, we grow up standing to say the Pledge of Allegiance every day here in the Star Spangled Banner. In addition to, you might just be driving on base, and that might be the time they stop and have the Star Spangled Banner. Everybody stops. That's the way I grew up. But that did not make me patriotic. That it was a routine. What made me patriotic and actually love this country is because of the history of this country. And at times when there were certain communities in this country that were discriminated against, not treated fairly, we rose up and we did the right things for all of the folks in this country. That's what made me patriotic, not listening to a song. And so today, of course, we have several bills on the agenda that I may say the same thing about. I'm just trying to understand kind of why we're moving in the direction again. I'm not even against the bill. I'm just trying to understand what is the purpose of the bill, what we're trying to achieve. If I'm telling you, my experience might not be everybody else's experience, maybe just a song alone and saying saying the Pledge of Allegiance made them patriotic or love this country. It didn't do it for many of us because it was just a routine. It was just something you had to do every day. So I'm trying to figure out again, what is the purpose of the bill?
I think it's when you look at what's happening nationwide currently, and knowing that we're each of us as policymakers, we have the right to support this piece of legislation or vote against it. But at the same time, I think it's going to serve purpose for the young children that may not have the opportunity to hear the national anthem. Although many of you, like myself, go to ball games and hear the national anthem. In fact, recently at my granddaughter's softball game a couple of weeks ago, the national anthem was played. And but at the same time, young children don't have that opportunity because some of those parents don't go to the ball games and
Right.
sporting events and
So,
things like that. So,
thank you for that. And I'm not going to even challenge, the answer, because I'm going to, believe that is your belief. But we do have a fundamental right in this country to parent. I mean, it's a fundamental right. So what I'm still trying to figure out again, like what it is you're trying to achieve by children hearing the national anthem. Because the story behind it, the history behind it is really what they need to hear. Like what's actually written in the bill.
That's right.
About how we got to the Star Spangled Banner. Yeah. Not the song itself.
I know.
But the history of it. You have a great line in here. Mm-hmm. It's on page 2 of the bill, starts with line 50, and it says, for over 100 years, the Star Spangled Banner has served to inspire generations of patriotic Americans, and it is imperative that students have exposure to this history and inspiration. I agree with that 100%.
I think you.
But it should say, as well as all history and inspiration that shaped this democracy. And we have a bill that's coming up that's going to attempt to keep us from doing that. But I agree with that statement, that the story itself is the inspiration, not just the song. It's the learning of the history about how we got to the song is what our students need to hear,
Well,
as well as all history.
teaching our children to be patriotic and loving this country, it starts early on. And certainly, I think that's the driving force behind why I think this bill is important. And
Mr. Chairman.
I have a question for the gentleman from Tuscaloosa. Did you get input, and this is about the origins of this bill? Did you get input from educational professionals or parents? Like, who came to you and said that this bill is essential?
I took a personal poll, and I could ask every person in the audience today on a blank sheet of paper how they feel about this, and it would match the poll numbers that I did. Okay, yes, the public will support this, and that's why it's a constitutional amendment, giving the public the opportunity to vote on this. So yes, I did. Senator.
This is a constitutional.
Any other questions for
This is
Senator
a
Allen?
constitutional
Senator
amendment.
Kelly? Senator Kelly?
Yes, sir. Was it ever considered to make this a daily requirement while school was in session?
Early on, yeah, we thought about that, Senator, and having all sporting events play it as well. But we had some senators felt like that maybe it'd be best for us to exclude athletics, and because some of their campuses already plays a national anthem already, like my granddaughter's school. Okay. But a lot of schools, in my opinion, does not play the national anthem as far as a weekly event, or having the choir or the band or someone on a piano or a soloist sing the national anthem.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Coleman Madison?
Senator Allen, I know you typically bring bills similar to this, although I think they kind of conflict on one hand with some of the ones you bring, but nonetheless, that's who you are. But I do have a problem with making this a constitutional amendment. I think it should have started with the State Board of Education. This is a policy kind of thing. Our Constitution is long enough. It really is long enough, and I don't think that this is one more thing that needs to be added to the Constitution. If anything, we need to be trying to clean it up. But to my colleague, Senator Coleman's response to it, playing the national anthem not going to make people patriotic. I've often said I'd rather see a sermon than hear one. So it's how we act. It's how patriotic we are. It is how we respond to the principles that this country was founded on, that we teach our children, because they learn more about what we do than what we say. And certainly once a week, they're going to learn more about how we treat each other than hearing this. And again, if they just hear it and don't know the words, like some popular tunes, I was, used to always got a nice beat. I give it a 10 or whatever. And, I'm just driving to the rhythm of it. And somebody said, do you know what the words mean? And it was a hip hop song. I like the beat. And I decided to listen to the words. And I'm like, oh my God. Is this what I've been listening to? So again, it goes back to what is the intent? And if we really want to instill patriotism in our young people, this is not the answer. So I can't support you.
Okay. Any objections using previous roll?
Yes.
Clerk, call the roll.
Senator Butler.
Aye.
Senator Elliott. Senator Orr. Senator Allen.
Aye.
Senator Albritton. Senator Roberts. Senator Bell. Senator Kelly. Senator Coleman Madison.
No.
Senator Marika Coleman. Senator Stewart.
No.
8-3.
8 ayes, 3 noes, and bills given a favorable report.
Who made the motions?
Don't look at me.
I'll do. Gerald did it, and I second.
Gerald Allen and Elliott.
Elliott.
Okay, we've got, 4 bills, and, I'm gonna go out of order a little bit because there's 3 public hearings, or 2 public hearings have been called. I want to get the others out of the way first, so call, Senate Bill 243 by Senator Chambliss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill deals with utility line locates. As an engineer and those in the surveying profession, same and similar situations. The current law requires the utilities to be located within 5 days after we make a request, and that is not being done. It hasn't been being done for a long time. I personally have called multiple times on the same project, and they don't get located. So what we're doing is having real problems in the field and re-engineering, field engineering, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to come to a point to figure out where the problem is. You know, the contractors call and they get located, and that's great. I'm not trying to interfere with that at all. We want that to happen. But if we can get the information ahead of time, we can design around these problems, but we're not able to get that. And this is a problem that's going on statewide. And certainly there are a lot of utilities that are concerned with this language in the bill. And what we plan to do is all meet in a room next week and try to work this out.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions for Senator Chambliss? If not, Senator Roberts, Senator Coleman Madison.
To run me by this, just break it down and give me an example.
Okay, say I have a client who calls me and they have a project at a specific location. They say, I want to put this type building there, that kind of thing. So I call the Alabama One Call system and put in a request for a line locate. So then they would send that request out to all the utilities. The utilities would come out there and mark their lines. I'd send my surveyor out there. He would survey all those locations in relations to the boundary, the topography, all that kind of stuff. Then I could design the site to avoid those utilities. But if I don't know where they are, I can't design to avoid. So I do the best I can, and not just me, this is others statewide that are having this issue. Do the best I can, and then when the contractor gets the job, he calls the line locate, and they go out there and locate within 48 hours like they're supposed to. And the contractor calls me, and you know, all these utilities are interfering with the way he needs to do his work, and he's got equipment sitting there. We're trying to avoid all that, and we can avoid that if they would mark them ahead of time.
So you're saying that they are not coming out and marking them ahead of time, and the contractors are actually getting underway?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Is there a time limit as far as how far in advance that they need to come out and do this prior to construction?
For a contractor, they have 48 hours to do the marking. For us, in the planning process, they have 5 business days. And that's fine. We don't have a problem with that. But what's happening is we're calling multiple times and they never come out. Nobody. So we're trying to figure out what's the problem.
I'm just wondering, if this bill is really going to fix it, or is it something that needs to be dealt with in the industry through licensing or what? I don't know.
Well, it's already in the law that they have to do it. So it's not being done. So what this does, it starts putting a cost onto those who don't do what they're supposed to do. And then hopefully we'll get to the point where we can get the work.
Okay, one last question. What is the fee? You said since this is already law, they are not abiding by the law.
Mm-hmm.
So you're adding a fee. Am I missing?
No, we're just saying that if I call twice and they don't show up in those 10 calendar days, then I can hire somebody to do it and I can send them the bill. That's what it does. So it doesn't require them to do anything if they would just locate the lines.
Oh, okay.
It would be of no effect if they locate.
So now, is there something in here that states how they will be notified of this change? You know,
it's
creatures of habit here. So
how they're notified that they need to locate the lines?
Well, I mean, you know, it's a law that, okay, but now you've added, said, okay, but the law has changed. We can have third party and you will be billed. The law now allows us to bill you and you are obligated to pay.
They already know. They already know.
Well, what's the point of this law then? It seems like this is already the law.
They know because this has been introduced. So word has gotten out very quickly. And I'm willing to sit down with them and work it out.
Okay, that's why I mentioned about the industry, you know, okay, thank you.
Okay.
I think you need a second, Mr. Chairman, and I'll do it.
Senator Elliott seconds.
Who made my first motion?
Senator Roberts, Senator Elliott. Any objection to use previous roll?
Senator Butler?
Aye.
Senator Elliott? Senator Orr? Senator Allen? Senator Albritton? Senator Roberts? Senator Bell? Senator Kelly? Senator Coleman Madison?
Aye.
Coleman? Stewart, Senator Stewart. Okay.
11 ayes, no nays. Bill's given favor report. Senate Bill 244, Senator Chambliss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one also deals with design professionals. Most people assume that design professionals carry professional liability insurance. There is no requirement for us to do that. This bill simply says that if you choose not to carry liability insurance, you have to notify your client in writing.
Any questions for Senator Chambliss?
Second.
Senator Albritton moves for favorable. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Allen. Any objections, previous roll? If not, previous roll carries, and the bill's given favorable report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee.
All right, I've got the next one is Senate Bill 237. Bottom line, we have a Saturn 1B rocket sitting at the Tennessee-Alabama state line. It needs to be refurbished and restored, and this bill will prevent it from being moved from that location, or if it cannot be repaired, they'll have a replica installed there. Any questions?
Question.
Senator Coleman.
Thank
Madison.
you. I have no problem with being specific as far as that particular monument, but the statement says that this bill will require controlling government that replaces a memorial building, and that's not a building to maintain the original name and erect a mark memorializing the name. It seems like we're going back to something that we've had before. I will be bringing an amendment, since I don't have one ready now, to make this bill specific to the rocket. Okay? But I can't vote on it today on a yes, but
I got you. That language was added in after my bill was put in, so I don't know how the language got there. I think Senator Allen may have a comment on that.
Actually, the goal is to make sure that the Saturn rocket was being taken care of, making sure that it's been there for how many years, Mr. Chairman?
44.
44 years. And so it is a monument.
Oh, I'm not arguing that point. I totally agree. It's just that I don't find anywhere in the bill that it makes reference to that.
Mr. Chairman, we've got Steve Murray in the audience. Jay, if you would, come to the podium and help us with this question for the senator.
Okay, my question is that as it was presented by the sponsor of the bill, you know, this is about saving the rocket, and I totally agree with it. I think it's that 65 is a gateway into pretty much the northern area for the state of Alabama, and that is an identifiable monument to let you know when you get in Alabama, especially the Huntsville Space Rocket era. But this does not state specifically, this kind of takes it into encompassing everything. We've kind of gone down this rabbit hole before. I support the preservation of the rocket, but I'd like for this bill to be specific to mention that and this is what we're talking about, so that we don't drag in everything else like the big net?
Yes, Senator. Page 6 of the current bill has section 2, which provides that the State Council on the Arts shall commission and the design and construction of a replica of the Saturn 1B rocket at the rest stop.
I still say it's the way it's written is too broad. If we are talking about, and it's mentioned on the last page I see, but if we're talking about the Saturn 1B, then we need to start at the beginning talking about the Saturn 1B and let this what this bill is about.
Yes, Senator. Well, I'm happy to work with the sponsor as he wishes to. I've been commenting on this and working with Senator Allen and Senator Butler, just at looking at the language that exists in the bill and how that would modify the existing monuments bill. But I'm here as a resource, as someone who's kind of
I understand,
read
but
this
you
section of the
understand
code.
definitely where
I
this is
do understand
going and the appearance. I don't want to shed a negative light on something that is positive that Senator Butler is trying to do, and I agree. I just think that the way it is written, it raises other issues and brings in, it's not a possibility, it will bring in other items that we've had to go down this before and not in favor of.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we having a public hearing on this?
Yes.
Okay.
No. We
Not on
don't
this
have a
one?
public hearing on it, but it's been brought up, and Senator Coleman Madison has started discussing it. If you
I
have,
just wanted to make sure. I don't
Sure.
know why I had it read that this one too. I actually have several amendments to offer today on the legislation because, of course, it does mention in the final section the Saturn IB rocket, but there's some changes in this bill on page 5 from the original version of that monuments bill, again, that we had already dealt with in another legislative session. And it's kind of unfortunate that Senator Butler's bill has been co-opted, because what it does is it takes away that original $25,000 fine if you move a particular monument, and that changes that to $5,000 for each day. And so, again, I do have an amendment that I'd like to offer that is specific to that particular area, that allows some type of notification. And so the amendment simply reads, replace line 132 on page 5 with the following. Entity shall be given 7 days notice by the Attorney General before being fined. And that's just giving them a heads up that this is coming. You may not want to do that. So again, that gives them a 7-day heads up. And then the second portion of it, the second portion of the amendment is a two-phase amendment, reads replace line 134, and it lines directly up on page 5 with the following: continues after the notice period ends and until the entity has taken.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that amendment.
okay, Senator Allen has a second on that.
Who made the first motion?
Question.
Yeah, let me get you.
Okay, who made the first motion?
I'll make the motion on it since it's my amendment. I made the motion.
Senator Allen, Senator Coleman Madison.
Yes.
No,
No, Senator Allen seconded. I have a question. You acknowledging me for a question?
Yeah.
Okay. The question that I have is that when you change this is this changing? Okay, if the original says 25,000, why do we want to change it to 5,000 a day? Why wouldn't we not be consistent?
Let me just add this. When I introduced this bill, it was about the Saturn 1B rocket to be put at, well, it's there now. It's got to be refurbished. The other language came when I got the bill. I don't know how it got in there, but it did. And if you've got amendments, I'll entertain those.
Yeah. Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, I'm used to being in court.
Well,
y'all. I'm
I'll
sorry.
take that. As long as you give me the page, the pay for the Your Honor, yes.
Mr. Chair,
I guess I would, my question really is, I guess we're piggybacking or feeding off of each other because, again, too, when you came to talk with us about even co-sponsoring, it was specifically about that rocket.
That was all that was in there. And when I got the bill, it had this other language in there.
So again, y'all know I'm new up here. I keep saying I am, but is it?
Well, I'm feeling new up here too.
Is it customary for someone else to co-opt somebody else's entire bill? Because what it's doing is it is changing the monuments bill. That's what it's doing.
And
Instead of just focusing on the bill that you wanted to.
Yeah, that's
have.
a question I'll have to ask the reference service. But
can we carry this over, Mr. Chairman? I know we're in the middle, but can we carry this?
if you want to make the motion,
I move that we carry this over, and let's try to go back to your original intent, which I can support.
Second.
To carry this over.
Because Ms. Chair, because we do have a whole nother public hearing. Give everybody an opportunity to really talk with you one-on-one.
All in favor of carrying the bill over, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. Carried over.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Next bill, Senate Bill 220, which has a public hearing called by Mr. Stone. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Robin Stone, the Executive Director of the Alabama Alliance of Healthcare Consumers. The Alliance is a coalition of both public and private employers throughout Alabama that advocate for quality, reliable, and affordable health care. Our purpose is to represent the perspective of all the employers who provide health care to their employees. Collectively, over 2.75 million people in Alabama receive their health care through their employers. Employer health care benefits include the largest group of insured individuals in Alabama. I'm here today to point out the serious impact of Senate Bill 220 will have on this large group of Alabamians and to ask you respectfully to make changes to protect consumers' access to care and avoid out-of-pocket costs that would incur through this bill. Alabama's pharmacists are an important and valued part of the healthcare delivery system. Unfortunately, this legislation is not in the best interest of healthcare benefit consumers. Under this bill, the legislature would give pharmacists the authority to ignore their contractual obligations and refuse to fill prescriptions for Alabamians who are covered by their health care benefits through their employers because they disagree with the level of compensation that they would be receiving for that specific drug. The key elements of health care are access to care, cost of care, and most importantly, quality of care. From an employer benefit perspective, it is hard to see how Senate Bill 220 improves any of these important areas for consumers. Under this bill, a consumer would be denied service indiscriminately at their own pharmacy, resulting in inconvenience, frustration, and most importantly, possible serious impact to their health, particularly for patients who have a serious chronic condition. Employers expect the benefit plans they sponsor to be available consistently for all employees and all healthcare provider networks, including pharmacists. This legislation would make getting a simple prescription an iffy proposition. If this bill is approved, it would decrease the reliable access that consumers now enjoy at the pharmacy counter and reduce the overall value of employer-provided healthcare benefits. This bill also puts the legislature squarely in the contractual process and allows pharmacists to ignore the most basic and vital provision of their mission, which is to fill a customer's prescription. This bill also gives effectively start the legislature down the path of setting reimbursement levels for all level of healthcare providers. Pharmaceutical drugs have become the driving cost of healthcare benefits. Senate Bill 220 would also allow pharmacists to propose more costly drugs to consumers as alternative therapies, regardless of the instructions of their pharmacists. Senate Bill 220 effectively is a mandate on employer health care benefit plans. It would alter whether or not a pharmaceutical benefit would even be available and at what cost. We see no benefit to patient outcomes, access to care, and certainly no reduction in cost of care. If the legislature approves contractual cherry picking by pharmacists, it can expect similar requests from other providers. This bill would leave consumers standing at the counter without medications that they or their family need and no idea where to go get the prescription filled. Amendments have been presented to the Pharmacy Association that would provide at least some level of assurance for the patient by requiring a pharmacist who declines to fill a prescription to instruct the patient to contact their health plan for directions to a pharmacy that will fill the prescription. The amendment also requires the pharmacist to notify the health care plan directly that the prescription was denied within 48 hours. Another amendment also requires a pharmacist to suggest an alternative therapy to a patient can only propose an option that will cost the patient either the same amount or to prevent higher out-of-pocket costs to that patient. We encourage the committee to adopt these reasonable amendments that will provide at least some level of protection for consumers. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this legislation. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Is there any questions for Mr. Stone from committee members? At this time, I'm going to relinquish the chair to the vice chair, Senator Elliott, and I will speak on my own bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me make one comment relative to pharmacy and the practice, and I'll put this way. I'm retired. I have no conflict in interest there whatsoever. But I'm going to tell you this. This is the only business that I can think of in the state of Alabama where insurance companies expect and want and desire a pharmacist to dispense a medication below his cost. That is just not right at all. It's just not right. It's not done. And our communication too on this bill says that the pharmacist shall not discuss cost with the patient. Let me tell you this. I've practiced for 50 years. When a physician would prescribe a medication and it was costly beyond that patient's possibility, what most pharmacists do, practically all of them, 99.999, get on the phone, they call the doctor, and they say the insurance company will not pay for this medication. And at that time, the physician will write another prescription for Ms. Jones for whatever she needs. Insurance companies have bought, in many cases, what we call pharmacy benefit managers. They own those companies. Those companies are driving up healthcare costs. One word I have for them, or a few words, they're absolutely an unnecessary burden on healthcare costs in this nation. They are the biggest cost driver of our high cost of medications. And the insurance company has gotten in bed with them. They've bellied up to them, and they have purchased PBMs in their own companies. 18 Blue Cross Association members own PBMs. And this bill right here just makes one simple statement, essentially, that the pharmacist can refuse to sell a medication, i.e. send that patient to another drugstore or call the doctor and get a cheaper medication, if he's going to be reimbursed by the insurance company, i.e. the insurance company -PBM, for his cost. This is a threat to rural health care. This is driving small insurance companies out of business, and it's totally unnecessary. You know, I thought while I was looking at this bill 2 or 3 days ago, maybe if, there are companies in this state that got 90% of the insurance business, maybe we need to sort of lure in some more healthcare companies like Aetna. I've heard that name before. Humana, I've heard that name a lot. There's some other insurance companies. There may be a lack of insurance competition in this state. And that's the way I feel from the depth of my heart. What I see insurance companies, not just Blue Cross, not just Aetna, all of them have seen the benefit of buying up PBMs. And I've seen PBMs operate. If you don't believe what I'm saying, get on to all of you not in the insurance business or pharmacy business, go out there and Google PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, and read some of the horror stories that insurance companies have done with PBMs, buying them up, operating them, and doing everything they can to drive up healthcare costs for the profits in this nation against healthcare consumers. So this bill simply says that pharmacists may decline filling a prescription, and that happens a lot. What we do when we put something in the computer, thankfully I'm not doing that anymore, but you put it in the computer and the insurance company said rejected. What do? We get on the phone, we call Dr. Jones, says Ms. Smith is here with a prescription. The insurance company has refused to pay for it, and she don't have the money out of pocket to do it. You'll ask for suggestions. What medication do we have that you can fill this prescription that will accomplish this purpose? And we discuss it with him. This, what the insurance companies want to say is, we can't even discuss it. To me, that's a fundamental First Amendment United States Constitution problem with telling the pharmacist he cannot speak to one of his customers in private to discuss their health care needs, including the cost. It's just wrong, patently wrong. And I've got friends on both sides of this, and I hope I have friends on both sides. But what I'm talking to you now is from my heart, from my 50-year knowledge of what happens between the doctor, the pharmacist, and the insurance companies. You go back and look at the profit profiles of a lot of insurance companies that are in the healthcare business. It's just wrong what's happening. So I'm going to leave my comments there and let you make your decision. I know all of you have been contacted by insurance companies here in this state against this bill, and then you've got a choice, siding up with them or siding up with Ms. Jones, your constituent, against her health care cost. You either vote to raise her health care cost or vote to give the profits to the insurance company. That's the choice. So Mr. Chairman, I'll be through.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'd like to do is go through the rest of the public hearing, if that's okay with you.
All right.
I just want to make sure.
I have an amendment to offer myself that was that needs to be offered before we adopt.
Yes, we'll do the public hearing and then we'll work through those amendments if that's okay with you. Okay, so we heard from Mr. Stone, who was an opponent of the bill. I think the chairman is a proponent of the bill. So let's go to another opponent of the bill, Mr. Ted Hosp. Good afternoon, Mr. Hosp.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. And members of the committee, respectfully, responding to Senator Butler's, the chairman's comments, we actually are not suggesting that that this bill be modified in a way that would disallow a pharmacist from refusing to fill a prescription if they felt the cost of the drug was higher than their reimbursement amount. That's not the point that we are trying to make. What we do think, however, is that in the event a pharmacist refuses to fill a prescription because of the reimbursement amount, that there ought to be some notice to the health plan so that that health plan can follow up with the patient to ensure that the patient finds another pharmacy where they can get that medication. When a prescription is refused to be filled, there are only two people who know that that has occurred. It is the pharmacist and it is the patient. What we want to make sure happens is that the patient can receive a follow-up call from the health plan and then can be told, there's a pharmacy down the road, 2 miles from here, they will fill your prescription. Alabama has a number of extraordinarily prevalent chronic health conditions. We have the third highest rate of cardiovascular disease, the fourth highest rate of high blood pressure, the sixth highest rate of diabetes. All of these are treatable conditions, but they all require consistent, continuous medication in order to control them. When a patient comes into a pharmacy and their medication is denied, which we accept the fact that this bill would allow, we don't love that, but we accept it. We want to make sure that there's a follow-up with that patient and that that patient can be provided the name and address and phone number of a pharmacy where they can get that prescription filled. Again, we aren't taking issue with the discussion of alternative remedies, but we think if the discussion of the alternative remedy is based on the reimbursement that the pharmacy receives, then the substitution should be for a prescription that is either of equal or lower cost to the consumer, that it should not cost the consumer more if there's an alternative that is suggested. We are not asking for fundamental changes to this legislation. What we are asking for is patient protection. There's nothing about this legislation that will increase, decrease any insurance company's profit margin, revenue, or anything of that nature. All we're trying to make sure is that the patient is protected, that the patient has a place that they know they can go and get their prescription filled, and that the patient is not paying a higher out-of-pocket cost for an alternative that is being discussed with them. I urge you to adopt the amendments that will be introduced. It's my understanding that Senator Coleman Madison has a slight modification that would ensure that insurance companies are prohibited from retaliating against any pharmacy that refuses to fill a prescription. And we are absolutely in favor of that modification if that amendment is coming. So again, urge you to adopt the amendments. And once those amendments are adopted, we have no opposition to the legislation whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. We appreciate you coming. A proponent for the bill, Mr. Bobby Giles. Bobby, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair, acting as chair. Bobby Giles with the Pharmacy Association. I do want to keep this fairly simple and make sure that you understand that this is not something that is not. There's been a lot of spin about this. This is not a PBM bill. This is not an insurance bill. This is specifically a pharmacy business bill. It does do exactly what has been discussed to some extent, and it simply gives a pharmacist who is a business owner or a pharmacy owner the ability to not sell a prescription product if the payer is unwilling to pay for it, the cost of the drug. There's not a pharmacist out there practicing that does not want to take care of their patient. That is our goal. That's why we're in this healthcare field, is because we're good at taking care of our patients. And that's our goal every day, any day. We do not want to hinder access for any of these patients. And the only thing that's going to hinder access is the unwillingness of an insurer, payer, or PBM to pay for the drug. If the drug is being paid for, this patient is always being taken care of, period. Very simple. And even getting close to the cost. There's no dispensing fee for our services for most plans. This is just the cost of the drug that's being dispensed that we've got to reorder to be able to provide this service next time. Secondly, it allows the pharmacist open communication with that patient and tell them the truth. Tell them why we may choose our option of filling or not filling that prescription drug and help that patient determine what do they want to do. What is your option? Do you want me to fill it today and let's work out something with your mail order? Do you want me to see if I can help you find a pharmacy that's willing to fill it, maybe that buys better than this pharmacy does? This is what pharmacists do every day on prescriptions all day long, whether patients have insurance or not. And we should not be restricted in any way of communicating with that patient depending on how it's being paid for. If it's an insurance company, if it's workman's comp, if it's a charity, or if it's cash. So this very simply says a pharmacist can deny filling a prescription if it's not paid for, and tell the patient why. Does not increase cost, does not increase the burden on the Department of Insurance on regulation, and this allows these pharmacies, rural areas, other places, to continue to serve the majority of their patients, where if they continue to serve some of these and lose money, that they may not be in business next time they come around. This requires nothing, once again, this requires no change whatsoever if the cost of the drug is paid. And it's insane that we're asking this body to make sure that a pharmacist is paid for the cost of the drug or needs the ability to deny filling it when it's not paid for. On the amendments, there is an amendment that Ted Haas spoke of from Blue Cross Blue Shield. This is an additional requirement placed on pharmacists if we deny filling the prescription based on the reimbursement. Okay? An additional requirement. So you're not going to pay me the cost of the drug, but you expect me to make sure that patient calls the number on their card, I shall, is what it says, and call the health plan within 48 hours. There's a lot of patients out there that have Medicare or other health plans that they purchased online, on the internet, or otherwise. We would not even know who to call. That's not my biggest issue with that. My biggest issue is that if we deny filling it because they're not paying for it, we have these requirements. Nothing says that Blue Cross is going to call you or any other insurance company is going to call you when they choose not to cover the drug that you've been prescribed. You walk into the pharmacy, you hand the prescription in, or the doctor electronically sends it. Not covered. Not that they're not going to pay the cost. That's 100% out of pocket to you. 100%. And you know what we do? We call the physician, tell the physician that this drug is not covered, try to figure out a solution. Nobody from Blue Cross or the other insurance is looking out for that patient. But they're going to require that on a prescription that they're not willing to pay the cost. That's wrong. That's a bad amendment. And should we give that patient the name, address, and phone number of another insurance company that will cover that drug? Is that the notification you want sent out? I don't think it is. I don't think that's the intent of where they're going with this. And lastly, this covers all prescription plans across the board. We have no way of knowing on a therapy that we may discuss with a patient what that copay is going to be for that patient if it's an alternative. There may be a $1,000 drug that the PBM or the insurer is only willing to pay $900, so we say we're going to deny it, that had a $10 copay. There may be a $100 option that does the same thing for the patient that may have a $25 copay. So where I believe that pharmacists need to have the authority to take care of their patients and not be asked to dispense a drug that is not willing to be paid for by the insurer, but to put an additional requirement on that pharmacist to notify the health plan when they don't even do it themselves, when they don't cover it, is a bad amendment. That's where I'm at today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giles. We appreciate it very much. Next up, we have David Cole with BCA. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. From our perspective, the way this bill is drafted, we represent over 3,000 businesses throughout the state, and this is clearly government intervention into the contractual process. Nothing against our friends from the pharmacy committee, but from the pharmacy community. But if we feel like this creates a slippery slope, if with this with this legislation, if we are going to engage government into the contractual process between the healthcare plan and their customer, or the pharmacy and their customer, we feel like that, what business entity is going to be next, and where does this end? Where does this stop? It's been mentioned earlier, that if a health plan's customer, client, or patient is going to get their prescription filled, and for whatever they are denied, whether the pharmacist doesn't have it, whether they don't want to sell it to them, even if they do have it, because it's not going to meet their cost requirement. I believe it was mentioned earlier, only the pharmacist and that patient are aware of that. And so the amendment that's going to be offered is going to help that situation by making sure that health plan can help their client or their patient receive those prescriptions that they, in many cases, so desperately need, because you take a situation like, I'm sure we all have family members, some of which that may be elderly, like my mother, for instance. She's got high blood pressure. And so a lot of times when she goes to the doctor, she's got to go directly to her pharmacist, get that prescription filled so that she can hurry up and take those meds so that she doesn't become, in critical condition. At least with the amendment that's going to be offered, there's responsibility placed on the pharmacist to reach back out to that health plan so that that health plan can ensure that they are servicing their client and in many cases, prevent a situation that could become critical. And so we would, if the amendments that are going to be offered that have been discussed earlier by the opponents of the bill are accepted, we will also be neutral on the bill as well.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. We appreciate it. Next we have, and this is our last person that signed up. We are running a little bit short on time, but I want to make sure we give everybody an opportunity to speak. So we got, okay, I've been corrected. We're running a lot short on time. We have James Jones here. Mr. Jones, if you'd come to the mic, and he is a proponent of the bill.
Thank you very much, everybody. This is my first time here, so I don't really know how to address everybody. But Senator Butler, I didn't bring any notes. I would love to do just like you did, speak from my heart. Tell you what goes on every day in a pharmacy. I'm James Jones. I own 6 pharmacies, one in Prattville, Millbrook, 2 here in Montgomery, 1 in Greenville, and 1 in Phoenix City. I'm a proponent of the bill because there's 2 sides to pharmacy. How it ever got this way, I don't know. Technology, I think, created this monster. But there's a professional side to what we do, which is what we go to school for a long time to do. And that's to take care of you, your children, your parents, and the people in our communities. There's another side to this, though, and that's the business side, and that's why we're here today. We are not just seeing small reimbursement differences. We are seeing huge. I think when we sign, as you mentioned, contractual agreements, we feel like reimbursement. If I sent you to the grocery store to get a gallon of milk and told you I'd reimburse you when you got here, I think you'd expect to be reimbursed what you paid, okay? Now, I also realize from the insurance perspective that if there's 8 different grocery stores, you're going to get 8 different prices. So I'm not upset with them for being concerned about the cost of health care. God knows the PBMs, as Senator Butler said, are driving the cost of health care out the roof. They're not here in the community to take care of you folks, but they're the ones who put you on hold for 45 minutes when you call them trying to work out something. Have you tried to call one of these plans lately? Have you tried to call one of the chain pharmacies that they own lately? You'll get put on hold 40, 45 minutes. We have physicians calling us saying, please take care of our patient. Please take care of our patient. I'm tired of holding on the phone. I can't hold any longer. I've been waiting for a prior approval. I can't get these people on the phone. I've dialed, for this instance, the 8th phone number to try to get to somebody who can help me take care of this patient. Yes, that's what happens in the real world in pharmacy. We've all got to work together. I realize that. But there's no way I can go back and tell my pharmacist, you have to take on an extra phone call during the day and be put on hold for an hour when you've got UAB Children's Hospital waiting to talk to you to design a formula for a drug that doesn't come in a pediatric dosage so this premature baby can come home and live in their community. You really want me to be on the phone with a healthcare company? No, we shouldn't have to do that. Although, if there's something that they don't want to cover, we should be able to work with the physician's office. Yes, we should look for the least cost-effective ways to accomplish the same goals. But I'm a proponent of this bill, but I'm not a proponent of the amendments because it creates a barrier to health care when you look at what goes on in the local setting. The other thing I've got to say is, I was talking to one of my pharmacists yesterday in one of my stores, and they were talking about some of the chain stores that some of the PBMs own. And they said, you know, if you go to this pharmacy, and one of the technicians used to work in one of those, they're 4 days behind. Well, what happens if you have an emergency room prescription? What happens if you have an eye injury, you need medication then? What happens when they don't have it in stock? I've had physicians call me and say, my patient has waited 4 days from this place. They're not going to be able to get it into next week, and they needed this medicine 4 days ago. And then you're going to reimburse me at some, you know, I've got an example in my pocket right here where I was reimbursed $370-something under my cost for a prescription. What do I do? What do I do? I've got to take care of that patient. These are my friends and my neighbors. And I don't mean to beleaguer this point, but we concentrate on the professional side of this. I realize there's a cost-effective part of this, and we're willing to do whatever we can to try to take care of that patient. We're not throwing out the patient out the door. If all you need to do is put a quarter in a vending machine and get pills and be on your way, that's one set of patient population. But when your mom or your dad or your family members got COPD, diabetes, high blood pressure, and poor circulation, there's a problem. You need more than to put a quarter in a vending machine, and you don't have time during the day to spend on the phone with a health plan. That's about all I've got to say, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We appreciate you you coming today and sharing your thoughts. Committee, this is how I would like to handle this. Has been discussed. There are a number of different amendments. I'd like to go through and offer those amendments, and we'll work with the chairman. It's his bill on how to handle those. And then I'd like to do discussion once we get the bill in shape where it's got whatever amendments it's got on it or not. Does that work for everybody? Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to start with some amendments. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to offer the amendment you and I have discussed previously, okay? Members, this should be in your packet. And it is the amendment that has been discussed. If the pharmacist declines dispensing services, the pharmacist shall instruct the individual to contact the health plan for assistance with locating an alternative. So that's part of it. And then the second part of it is if an alternative drug is discussed with the individual, then the alternative drug to be dispensed must be lower in cost. Does everybody have that amendment in front of them? It should be in everybody's packet, according to the clerk. Looks like this. Okay. So I'm gonna, does anybody have any questions on the amendment?
Is this question?
Yes,
Is this
ma'am.
the amendment that one of the speakers was talking about that's going to be?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So I've offered the amendment. It's been seconded by Senator Coleman. Okay. And I'm going to call the roll on the amendment if that's okay with the chair. Okay. So I did. Motion.
And you offered it too.
Well, yes, ma'am. One and the same. And then seconded by Senator Coleman. And clerk, when you're ready, we're going to call the roll on the amendment. Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, you know, it's been talked about the reimbursement cost and all. So if there's a insurance company that's offering a reimbursement cost of X dollars and the product is that much more offered by the pharmacist, does the patient have the option to pay that difference? So I'm asking, I don't know. I need a pharmacist or an insurance company to.
No is the answer.
No is the answer. They don't have that option. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we've got the amendment in front of us, and we're going to call the long roll. Clerk, on the amendment, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
is this the amendment that you're speaking of? Is that the sponsor's amendment?
It's not the sponsor's amendment. It's my amendment that I'm offering.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Clerk, if you would call the long roll on the amendment, please.
Senator Tom Butler,
Aye.
Senator Elliott,
Aye.
Senator Orr, Senator Allen, Senator Albritton, Senator Roberts, Senator Bell, Senator Kelly, Senator Coleman Madison,
Aye.
Senator Marika Coleman, Senator Robert Stewart. That amendment passes.
Okay, thank
I
you.
have another.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and we're going to go to the second amendment, and we're kind of doing this in order for a reason. So, Senator Coleman Madison, you're recognized.
Thank you. This is in relationship to the amendment just passed, and it was contingent upon that one passing, that in between the first and the second, if you all have this, and to insert, nothing in this section may be used as retribution against the pharmacist. And I was very concerned about it being a red flag here, type of, well, these pharmacists don't do it. And so we're talking about a contract. I'm sensitive to this issue because what I don't understand is that if a person is dispensing something and I had to pay $20 for it, but you're going to only reimburse me $3, that's a loss. Thank you.
So I have a motion from Senator Albritton. I have a second from Senator Coleman. Previous roll?
Yes.
And a motion to use previous roll without objection? Okay, then that amendment passes as well. So yes, ma'am?
This amendment
I got it. I'm going to give it to you.
has to be one amendment together, the way it's written. It be voted on one.
Can we amend yours? Can we amend yours and put it?
Clerk, I think we're just fine. We've adopted that amendment, and then she's amending as well.
Yes. Here it is right here, but that was a section. The first one had to pass.
No, ma'am, we've already done that, and that we've adopted that amendment. And we've just used the previous roll on the second amendment, and we have adopted the second amendment. And now we're back on the bill. Are there any questions? Are there any other amendments or anything that needs to be added onto the bill?
I've got one amendment.
Mr. Chairman has an amendment.
Mr. Chairman, this is an amendment that essentially says that the pharmacists will discuss cost other drugs to be discussed with the prescribers. What we always do, we call the doctor first and try to find a reasonable substitute or generic available or whatever. This just is communication with the pharmacist and the doctor.
Okay, the chairman's offering the amendment. Do I have a second? I have a second by Senator Coleman Madison. We're going to use the previous roll without objection. Okay, that amendment is adopted, and we're back on the bill for final passage or for passage.
Move for adoption.
So we're using previous roll without objection. Okay, the bill receives a favorable report as amended. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to give your committee back to you.
What if I don't want it?
Well, we got one more bill. I'll handle that if you want me to.
Well, let me see if I can find my schedule here.
I'm gonna go ahead and get them coming up. We've got Senate Bill 247. It's a public hearing. I think Representative Oliver is here to handle that bill, and you got the con, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Oliver, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On
I
behalf
hope this
of
does not dampen your future desires to run for the Senate.
no, there's not much danger of that, Mr. Chairman, just to say. I appreciate Senator Barfoot allowing me to carry this bill in your committee. This bill would prohibit certain public entities, including state agencies, local boards of education, and public institutions of higher education, from promoting or endorsing or requiring affirmation of certain divisive concepts relating to race, sex, or religion. It only prohibits the extreme divisive concepts that are listed in this bill, does not stop teaching about slavery, bad history, or that racism exists, it does not stop the teaching of Black history, or for that matter, any other type of history. What this bill does is it stops a new woke ideology that divides people, adults and children alike. I ask that at the appropriate time that I get a favorable vote on this bill.
We had a public hearing. You know who was here to testify on the public hearing?
There's a bunch of folks here.
Let's see. 247. Yeah. Carol Wilson. You want to speak on the bill? You're recognized.
She's one of mine, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
You got a good senator.
Chairman in this distinguished body and my Senator Elliott. It's a pleasure to be before you this afternoon. I am speaking in favor of passage of SB 247. My first public speaking engagement was on the sensitive issue of race and discrimination at the very youthful age of 13. I was a representative of my Catholic youth organization and was sent to a regional conference to address the issues of race and discrimination in our country. Our youth, we were confused as to why everything was framed in black and white. All these years later, I come before this distinguished body addressing some of the same issues. Our nation's culture has evolved, and with that, we now have more complex issues, very sensitive issues. It is my feeling and belief that SB 247 addresses some of these complex issues. As Representative Oliver stated, the intent of the bill is to provide prohibitions on the promotion, endorsement, and affirmation of certain divisive concepts in certain public settings and authorizes certain penalties if this is violated. SB 247 prohibits the endorsement, the promotion, and the affirmation of the following divisive concepts: that any race, any color, any religion, any sex, any ethnicity, or national origin is inherently superior or inferior. It prohibits teaching, promoting that individuals should be discriminated against or adversely treated solely because of their race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. It prohibits the teaching or the promotion that the individual moral character of an individual is solely determined by his race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. There are so many good mentions in this bill. The understanding of the divisive concepts in this bill will actually address discrimination in whatever form it will take going forward. I ask you to please consider passing SB 247. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Robert White.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. To the members of the committee, my name is Robert White, and I'm a career educator. I've taught in the social sciences for 30 years. I'm also a pastor, and I'm very concerned about some of the implications in this bill. I know Representative Oliver and his family very well. Went to Dadeville High School, and I'm sure you all are familiar with what we are struggling with there. In teaching, one of the things that I have come to appreciate is the value of dialogue, discussion, and debate. And I also understand that anything that tends to threaten dialogue, discussion, and debate should be analyzed as to why those things need to be discussed. I have with me my law professor, also Dr. John Eidsmoe, who is here. And one of the things that I learned, he and Senator Albritton and I, when we were in his class, we learned that free thought was a gift of God, and free speech is the fruit of free thought. And we could not have a free market without free speech. And to limit free speech is also to limit the free market. So I want to understand the relationship, the intellectual relationship between the discussions, the dialogues, and the debates that take place in academia and the real world. Because I'm a pastor and I got started street preaching, if I were to, and when I go and street preach in blue states, I am accused of spreading hate speech. And then when I come back to my red state and teach African American history and humanities, I might be accused of divisive language and also have my books and research censored, which I think does not help in any sense of the word. There's so many different mechanisms that take place at the local level that could handle different types of pedagogy in the classroom. And I think that rather than bolster state orthodoxy in this case, I think turn it over to the local school boards to have discussions and to have regulations on their faculty would be better. I have a philosophical question that I'd like to ask, and I hate Senator Albritton has left because I was going to pose this directly to him. He's a good friend of mine. And if he was here, I would ask him, why is the excuse of the state's inability to legislate morality used when it's time to keep guns in the hands of people, but with the same steam and full tilt seeks the opportunity to legislate morality when it comes to learning? This is a gross contradiction, but which is more powerful, the gun or the idea? As opposed to putting guns in people's hands, why don't we put books in people's hands that can understand the events and circumstances that have taken place in our past so we will be less apt to repeat them? Critical race theory, intersectionality, and convergence theory, while not even mentioned in the bill, have more to do with Black criticism of white liberalism within white male patriarchy than it has to do with the attack on white conservative Christian values.
Now,
So
White, if you could wrap it up.
I will. Critical race theory nullifies the use of race as the race card. And as scholars, both white and Black, have agreed, America's #1 mental health problem is denial. Doing research on one's ancestry is a major business, and finding out one's heritage is important. Some claim that they do not want their children to go to school and learn that their grandparents were racist slaveholders. According to Ballotpedia.com, Chairman, many of the legislators have nothing to worry about because according to this source, many of them have African American blood in them, which makes them actually a part of the oppressed group and not that of the oppressor. I got one more point. Finally, if human intelligence is done away by the state, and the state uses my research and the research of other faculty members at state institutions, the only intelligence that is left is artificial and emotional, but it's not real.
Dr. White, we appreciate your comment.
Thank you, sir.
Patrick Harmon.
Ms. Chairman, I do have a question as he's coming. Are we going to do a time limit?
I'm trying to do 3 minutes.
Well, the only reason I'm asking is because no other speaker has been stopped as they were speaking. They had the opportunity to finish their entire speech.
I'm trying to keep 3 minutes in mind.
Okay, and duly noted, I asked the vice chairman on the last public hearing, so I just want to know what we're doing, and thank you for that. 3 minutes for everyone. Is that
Mr. Harmon?
Mr. Chair?
My name is Patrick Harmon. I taught literary criticism, including critical race theory and Marxist theory at the University of Alabama English Department for 20 years. I brought along my colleagues, Professor of History, Earl Tilford, and former head of the Philosophy Department, Max Hokut. I brought them here in support of Ed Oliver's bill. When I taught critical race theory and Marxist theory, I taught them. Nothing in this bill prevents them from being taught, but I did not indoctrinate. I did not use divisive concepts as those concepts are defined in this bill. And I would point out that the only concepts that are forbidden are suggesting that individuals are inherently responsible for actions committed by other members of the same race historically. I would certainly teach this, but I would teach against such a divisive concept. That's what Ed Oliver's bill does. It suggests that fault and bias should be assigned to races, colors, religions, sexes, ethnicity, national origin, solely on the basis of race, color, or religion. There's no threat at all to teaching history in this. There's no threat at all to teaching criticism in any way in this bill. It's a specific invoking of a sense of guilt, complicity, or need to apologize solely on the basis of someone's race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. This is, as I've said, indoctrination. This is damaging. This does not help race relations. It is not philosophical. It is not a legitimate educational effort. I taught on the graduate level, the doctoral level, the advanced undergraduate level, all these subjects, but I taught them in a way that never did the things that are warned against in this bill.
Mr. Herman, could you wrap it up for us?
Yeah, I'll wrap it up by saying that it's fine to teach about divisive theories, but nothing in this bill stops teaching about divisive theories. Teaching about divisive theories is not itself, per se, divisive. But it can be used in a divisive, indoctrinatory, politicized way that doesn't do anything good for our students or for the state of Alabama. Thank you.
Thank you. Stevie Hicks, Steve Hicks? Stevie, okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Stevie Ray Hicks. I'm here as a resident of Montgomery, the home of the civil rights movement, an educator in MPS, and a future parent to oppose SB 247. The last 3 years have been the most difficult of my career as an educator. We have navigated our students through a pandemic, the grief of losing loved ones to COVID-19, the challenges of virtual learning, all to return to our classrooms amid a wave of efforts by the lawmakers to censor classroom discussions, strip fundings from public schools, and deprive Alabama's children of the education they deserve. Firstly, this bill is designed to distort the truth about what is being taught in classrooms in Alabama. The language in this bill is intentionally vague and confusing. Bills like this have already caused a chilling effect on teaching, with educators fearful, anxious, and unable to get clear answers on what they can or cannot teach. In the wake of this bill, across the country, educators are also being harassed and threatened, so much that the Department of Justice has to step up its efforts to monitor harassment of educators. Our children deserve and want an honest and accurate education. My students are very smart and inquisitive. They have questions about what they notice about the world, and they deserve good answers. And it is certainly best for our children to have these discussions in a supportive environment with trained educators. We are in a state where our governor wants to take more than $300 million meant for our children's education and spend it on a water park, prisons, and plenty of other projects unrelated to education, to schools. Alabama schools consistently rank as the worst in the country. We are in the midst of a teacher shortage. I have myself considered leaving the profession. Teachers are exhausted, exasperated, and of attacks on our profession, on our schools, and on our students. If this bill becomes law, I know it will be the last straw for some educators. Many educators. Additionally, this bill will only add to the erosion of parents' trust in the state of properly educate their children. In my community, with parents who have been forced to create learning communities outside of school so their children receive a comprehensive, honest, and accurate education that fills the knowledge gaps that are created when educators do have the support they need. Your priority as lawmakers on this committee should be to do everything you can to support educators and students, not to pass laws that interfere with educators' ability to teach students rights to learn. I cannot give my students the education they deserve with bills like this. I cannot prepare them to understand the world around them and to build a better future for all of us if I cannot help them understand their own identities, to appreciate the identities of others, and to truly know our shared histories and the history of this nation.
Ms. Hicks, if you could wrap it up for us.
I will, thank you. Let us teach our children. Let our children learn. Let us ensure that students today are given the best chance at success. and let us make Alabama a state known for schools where all students thrive and where all people are welcome, accepted, and celebrated. Once again, this is Montgomery, the home of the civil rights movement, and I plan on teaching it inside or outside the classroom.
Thank you. Earl Tilford.
Earl Tilford, retired professor of history, Grove City College, retired Air Force intelligence officer. Across the country, university administrators are transforming institutions focused on political activism and indoctrinating students with ideologies hostile to academic excellence, and they do so through diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. DEI impacts cultures at all but one of Alabama's publicly funded universities. In 2015, the state's flagship university in Tuscaloosa hired a DEI director who reports directly to the provost. A Heritage Foundation study in 2021 revealed there are 31 to 34 full-time employees operating in the DEI capacities at the University of Alabama. In its Path Forward Progress Update, issued each year, there are 5 goals and 75 strategies extending DEI principles affecting faculty and administrative recruitment and retention, tenure and promotion, and a wide range of student activities. All courses are to reflect DEI foci by 2025. While DEI aspirations seem benign and inclusive, these policies can undermine the advancement of knowledge, diversity of ideas, and they can disrupt campus unity and inhibit the pursuit of excellence. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are cover words for transforming our universities and producing activists who will then go on to transform America throughout its culture. The University of Alabama's DEI Path Forward Progress Update has Goal 2, which is recruiting and retaining more diverse faculty and staff. It states, quote, "The provost will review the tenure and promotion process to value service performed by faculty and interest," unquote, and this is in the realm of social activism. They have to consider social activism along with pedagogy, publication and research, and service to the university, which are traditionally what a tenure will consist of. There are strategies that require advertisements reflect DEI policies, and a DEI official must participate in senior administrative hiring processes. Hiring a candidate who is not from a previously marginalized group will require written justification. And
Mr. Tilford, if you could wrap it up.
I will.
Thank you.
DEI thwarts the pursuit of academic excellence, and SB 247 returns our universities to the pursuit of excellence based on merit and the concept that all people should be assessed on their capabilities, character, and performance, not their race, skin color, gender, or sexual orientation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Camille Bennett.
Hello, my name is Camille Bennett. I'm the founder and executive director of Project Say Something. I'm the founder of Focus Scope Preschools, and I'm an activist. I would like to remind conservative Alabama lawmakers of their rich and extensive history of dog whistle politics. From Bull Connor to George Wallace, white men seem to love giving their constituents a show. In the name of political grandstanding and the criminalization of Blackness, it seems to attract votes. Representative Barfoot's divisive concepts bill is problematic on sight, namely because a group of white conservative men came together without the input of Black and marginalized people in Alabama. White men decided that Black folks couldn't think for ourselves, and they had the intellectual and moral aptitude to create a bill about divisive concepts. You say SB 247 is meant to unify, so I ask you to call it both ways. Understand that state-funded Confederate monuments that commemorate a war fought to keep Black bodies enslaved is divisive. Former slave plantations funded by the state that don't expose this truth about the Black bodies that built them are divisive. And the Confederate flag flown at public courthouses is divisive. The omission and erasure of Black history itself is divisive. Leave our children out of it. I work with teachers every day. I'm the founder of preschools. Our teachers are tired, grappling with challenging behaviors, and we are still experiencing the impact of the COVID crisis. Now they are scared they can be terminated by having the wrong book in their classroom. Last week, our teachers turned on the news and saw Governor Ivey force the resignation of Dr. Barbara Cooper, a Black woman and Secretary of Early Childhood Education. The public shaming and disenfranchisement of Black educators is divisive. At the end of the day, our children get hurt. A few months ago, 200 high school students in Tuscaloosa organized and staged a walkout because they were not allowed to address Black history prior to the 1970s. Dog whistle politics is a dangerous and age-old political game.
Ms. Bennett.
I'm almost done. But the response will remain the same, especially in Alabama. We are the heartbeat of the civil rights movement, and we won't stop. Where there is racial injustice, there will always be resistance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Max Holcutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, and ladies and gentlemen. I am Emeritus Professor of Philosophy at the University of Alabama, where I taught for 36 years before retiring. I support this bill for one reason, quite simple reason. I believe that it is inappropriate for publicly funded institutions to engage in promoting partisan ideological purposes, and also inappropriate for people who work for those institutions in the capacity as employees of those institutions to engage in those things too, including university professors. I myself always carefully refrained from indoctrinating my students. As a philosopher, I tried very hard to teach them to examine many different points of view and consider them on their merits and their arguments. But for those reasons, I should perhaps mention personally that I speak to you as a lifelong, for my adult life, member of a supporter of free speech, and as a member of the ACLU for many years, I opposed Jim Crow and racial segregation laws. But I see nothing in this bill that would prevent any person, any individual person, from engaging in constitutionally protected speech. That is, it needs to be remembered that rights, our rights under the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, belong to individuals, not to groups, and not to government agencies. It's not government agencies that have the right to speak as they think. It is individuals who do so. I would do nothing at all if I thought I would support nothing if I thought it would restrict the right of individuals to engage in expressing their personal opinions, as long as they did it politely and were able to tell people why they did it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Holcutt. John Eidsmoor.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is John Eidsmoe. I'm retired Air Force and a professor of constitutional law. I'm here to speak in favor of Senate Bill 247. Dr. Robert White was one of my prize students. I'm proud of everything he has done. However, if this bill did what he says it does and what his colleagues say to do, I'd be opposed to it myself. But it doesn't. If we take a look at the bill itself, look at Section 4, for example, on page 5. It says that it does not prohibit responding to questions. It does not prohibit discussing divisive concepts. It does not prohibit teaching history, including slavery, accurately. It does not prohibit promoting diversity. It does not prohibit anything that is protected by academic freedom or by the First Amendment. What it does prohibit is divisive concepts, which are defined as teaching that any race or color or religion, etc., is inherently superior or inferior, that individuals should be discriminated against because of those reasons, that people are of superior moral character because of race, etc., that people should be treated differently for race, etc., that blame should be assigned to a person because of his ancestry. Those are the things that it prohibits. In other words, this is not prohibiting free discussion. Rather, it is prohibiting branding people, silencing people because they disagree. It is exactly the opposite of what has been suggested here. It's been argued that this bill is overly vague. I'd only point out that if you make it real specific, then there's always going to be loopholes for people to get around. I think it is sufficiently specific that people know with reasonable certainty what is and is not precluded. As to whether this is a matter the legislature should be spending its time on, I'd point out that Article 14 of the Alabama Constitution gives the legislature plenary authority and plenary responsibility over education. This is an area that I think we need to deal with. I encourage you to vote in favor of this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That concludes all the people that signed up to speak on the bill. And yeah, that's got everybody. Any comments on the committee members?
I do have an amendment, Mr. Chairman, when it's appropriate.
It's appropriate.
Okay. So I'm going to offer this amendment, and I've discussed it with the bill sponsor. It is a friendly amendment, and we've talked with the House sponsor as well. It makes some technical changes, and Representative Oliver, if you would allow Mr. Chair to come and discuss the amendment.
All are simple. I've got the copy of it here, but on delete lines 62 through 66 on page 3. Replace lines 78 through 80 on page 3 with the following. Require its students, employees, or contractors to attend or participate in any training orientation. Replace line 83 on page 3 with the following. Require a student, employee, or contractor to share his or her personal point of view on any, that was it. And then on, let's see, 17, replace line 85 on page 4 with the following. Item 4, require its students, employees, or contractors to participate as part of any required curriculum, or, and it stops there. Then replace line 89 on page 4 with the following. Penalize or discriminate against a student.
This doesn't line up.
I'm sorry?
It doesn't line up with what we have.
Uh-oh. I don't know what to tell you unless.
Why don't we, the amendment, you get the final bill, draft your amendment and get someone to offer it on the floor.
I can do that. Okay. And I apologize for that, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, is it your pleasure that we're going to vote on this bill today? Just because of the, well, not just because, of course, I have my own reasons I would want it carried over. But if you're trying to get a clean version of the bill, it may be beneficial, especially with the lateness of the time, because I have a whole lot to say about this bill. It might be easier for us to carry it over to get it clean, if that makes sense.
We've had the amendment. The only amendment we don't have adopted is the one Representative Oliver. So I'm willing to vote the bill today. We can clean it up, get it on the floor, be done with it.
I'd like to see it clean because I'm not understanding. I'm trying to follow him, but I'm not understanding exactly what these
the only thing that
mean.
Like the net effect of them.
The clerk has informed me she does not have a copy of the amendment, so we'll get your amendment offered on the floor and make sure it's paired up with the final version out of the committee.
That's fine, sir.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I need to interject if I can. The amendment appears to be drafted properly. The amendment does line up with the bill. If you add stuff in the front of the bill, it then moves line numbers down. So if we're adding a line, then things are moving down. So it's up to the chairman how he'd like to handle it, but the amendment appears to be properly drafted and appears to flow. I would say that the amendment is largely stylistically, it would appear.
I have a copy.
Hold on.
Okay. The amendment is largely stylistic in lining up its requirements. It starts with require, and then the bill as passed out of the House diverts from that and goes back into require. So that's what the amendment
You want to
does.
offer the amendment?
I would like to, if we don't, and I think that it's proper to clean that up now, and then we can have that ready for the floor.
I'm not understanding what we're voting on, though.
Yeah, well, there's
You're going to offer it?
the way that you all are talking right now, I'm gonna just tell you, is very unnerving because we haven't even voted yet. So it's just already making the assumption that the bill is, maybe lie to me a little bit. Maybe let us go through the process.
We are.
But you're already saying what we're gonna do on the floor and we haven't even taken.
Oh, I'm asking him, is he going to offer the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized? I really would like for us to get this straightened out because, this is an important issue. Now, I'm sitting here and I've read the bill. And there are certain parts of the bill, I just really would like for us to all get in the room without a meeting per se, and really take it and explain it. Because I'm looking at the bill and I'm seeing both sides of it. Sometimes we read things and we see what we want to see because of past histories and things like that and things that have happened in history. But in reading the bill, some of the things that the sponsor says is, it doesn't say that. It's a lot of mistrust around this bill because a lot of things that have gone on and a lot of actions that things have happened. The governor's response to the lady on the book did not help. There are a lot of things that have gone on that has caused some mistrust around the critical race theory. And although this bill does not say anything about that, we got to call the elephant out in the room. And so all I'm saying is that there are some good components in the bill. And I really wish that we wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but that we try to understand. And maybe if we could understand this and say, because I don't think whether you are black or white, that you should be indoctrinating young people, that you should give them the facts, but you should not, because everybody has a personal view. I taught school, but I don't think you should impose your personal views on young, impressive minds. And so it's not just one way. It's not just one side imposing their views on one race. Sometimes it's the other way around as well. And so I don't think that should be done in any scenario. I think that's what this bill is saying, but I don't think that that's what we are hearing because there's a whole lot of mistrust around the huge elephant here. So, Mr. Chairman, I want us to get this right because I don't want to have to deal with this again in the future. And what it is doing is someone talked about our teachers in our schools don't know what to bring into the schools, what they can teach. I mean, when you take classic books out and find some fault with that. They don't know. So after a while, we are stifling young minds when we don't know it. But that's because people are afraid. We need to get this right.
Mr. Chairman.
We'll have plenty of time to talk one amongst each other, talk with the sponsor and Mr. Oliver. But I do want to get the bill out of committee today. And so we vote your conscience.
Can I make my comments then? Because I didn't get a chance to do that. Thank you. Part of the mistrust, though, listening to the gentlelady from Jefferson, is because of the way that the sponsor even introduced the bill at the beginning. That's a part of, he made it a partisan issue when he brought up a whole concept that the conservatives have co-opted, and the whole concept of what woke means. So that started it. If there's mistrust, but I'm actually one that read the entire bill, went through it line by line. I will tell you that was a little bit disappointed from the lawyers that got up. We also, when we talk about racism, we don't just talk about racism itself. We also talk about racist impact. Right? So let me tell you what's happening already, just because we're talking about this type of legislation in this body. My cousin called me the other night, upset, very upset. She's a teacher. She's actually a curriculum teacher in one of the largest school systems in the state of Alabama. But she is by trade a science teacher and does a lot of work on environmental justice type things. So she had taken her class to the Civil Rights Institute and some other places, but because she's into science and environmental issues, they started talking about what was happening to marginalized communities when it comes to putting large industry in it. So she did an entire curriculum for her particular school system. It never even made it to the board. She was upset because it made it to just the second person under the superintendent at this particular system. And this is what she was told. Because of the political climate in the state of Alabama, we can't do this. It is a fact. It is not an opinion that there have been many marginalized or minority communities, particularly African-American communities, that have been detrimentally impacted because large industry was put in their communities. There are large lawsuits all over the country because of what has happened. That is a fact. That's not an opinion. But because of the political climate and bills like this, she wasn't even given a shot. And I actually said to her, welcome to my world. But a part of what she said to me was this. She said, who's fighting for our history? And this is the part that someone actually mentioned it already, one of the speakers. She said this. She said, why is it the same group of people who think that we ought to preserve Confederate monuments? Remember, the Confederates were traitors to this country. Traitors to this country. But the same group of people who want to preserve that history think that it's not important for us to learn about ours or for other people to learn about the contributions of minorities in this country. That's not Black history or Native American history or Hispanic history. That's American history. So that's why when I was saying earlier today in the bill that Senator Allen had, when he talked about the inspiration or the historical inspiration of how the Star-Spangled Banner came to be, all of us need to be exposed to all of the history and the inspiration that made us the democracy that we are. These kinds of bills, again, when you read it on its face, I'm asking the question, and this is no different. Again, y'all not used to me up here than I've ever said. If we have a piece of legislation and we don't have documented cases of, or if we don't have data to say this is being done in Alabama, why are we doing it? So there's a portion on here. I looked at it, I said, oh, so where they're doing that at, Ms. Coleman, talking to myself. H says that meritocracy or traits such as hard work ethic are racist or sexist. This is under the definition of divisive conflict. Who's saying that? Who in our public school systems have categorized hard work as racist or sexist. But, you know, when you think about some of the things that are said, they say Black people are lazy and men work harder than women. So that's how you reverse those sayings, by saying the meritocracy or traits such as hard work ethic are racist or sexist. That's how you reverse it. And that's happened all the way through the definition. Like, who is blaming F? That the fault, blame, or bias should be assigned to race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. Like, in our public school system right now, who is saying to a white person or a white professor or their white student that you are at fault? Where are they doing that at? Do we have documented evidence? Can we quantify that these things are happening? Then I might be right with you in saying, you know, hey, that of course does not need to happen. I still teach. I'm a lawyer, but I still teach. I love it. I still teach at Miles College. I teach political science of all things. And as a partisan myself, I'm an elected partisan. I have to stand in front of that class, as some of the other professors have said, and give each side of the issue, because that's a part of being educated. They then get a chance to make their informed decision about if this piece of policy is right or wrong. And I teach Introduction to American Government. And the most rewarding thing for me as a professor is the student that came in that thought that government was for only old white men, which is these pieces of legislation maybe people think that is what you all are trying to take us to. That when the light bulb goes off and they understand how whatever career field they're going into has a direct correlation to public policy. But when you have these types of legislation that connect to that larger political issue that folks nationally, I pride myself that a lot of times maybe I'm disillusioned that we don't get caught up in some of the national stuff, but this is caught up in the national stuff that you didn't have to bring here in the state of Alabama. You just didn't have to do it. And it's unfortunate because what it does, when I sat here as a Black woman, and very rarely in this body for the 20-something years that I've served, do I even talk necessarily about race on the microphone. But as a Black woman today, it was hard listening to this debate. It's even harder, though, because I still got to serve with these folks that are going to vote on this piece of legislation. You all make it hard for us to serve with you.
Senator Coleman, we need to move on.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I just want to speak briefly. Thank you for your recognition, Mr. Chairman. I am from Selma, Alabama, the birthplace of the voting rights movement. My great-grandparents were sharecroppers. Sharecroppers. 50 cents a day is what my great-grandfather worked for. My grandmother was a nurse on Bloody Sunday. Okay? I'm not trying to be divisive, but these are facts. My grandfather was denied a VA. When he came back from World War II, he was denied a VA loan. When y'all talk about my great-grandparents being sharecroppers, they were not allowed to own that land. But I see many people able to own the land. That's not divisive. This is the truth. When I look at this legislation and I see not one Democrat, I'm the one that's dealt with discrimination, me and my family. That's our lineage. And there's not one. This is problematic. There's no input, no discussion. And my final point is, this is not about individuals. I know what my family's going through and what my race is going through. I do not blame my colleagues. I think they're fine people for what has happened and the degradation that that many people have faced, particularly Black people. But what we need to address are the systems not individuals. I have never accused anyone. I don't blame any of my colleagues for the fate, but these are just facts. And I feel like this bill is a guise to prohibit educating future generations so we can be more informed